The first and most important topic of this Torah portion is hospitality. Abraham is sitting at the entrance of his tent. He lifts his eyes and sees people passing by. Immediately, he runs to invite them inside and urges them to stay with him and enjoy his hospitality. From this comes a well-known saying in Judaism: greater is hospitality than receiving the divine presence. How did the sages come to the conclusion that attending guests is more important than talking to God? It feels almost heretic to even say it. How much more thinking or living by it? Taking preference in addressing immediate needs, caring for people at the expense, or seeing it as more important than God? As people of faith, those who take Scripture seriously, it is difficult for us to accept or understand this. Hospitality continues to be a prominent topic of this Torah portion. Another character who welcomes guests and is willing to protect them by risking his own life is Lot. God sends his angels, who look like people, to Sodom. Similar to Abraham, who sat at the entrance of his tent, Lot is sitting at the entrance of the city, at the city gate. When he sees these people, or angels, he urges them to come to his house, even when they insist on sleeping on the street. Lot, who is aware of the dangers in Sodom, wishes to protect them. Lot is willing to defend his guests. And when the townspeople attack his house, demanding that he sends them outside, Lot goes out of his house, closes the door behind him, and tries to protect them with his own body. He is willing to do anything to prevent his guests from being harmed. Back to Abraham. Why did the sages say that receiving guests is more important than talking to God? They said it because they understand the situation differently. According to the rabbinical viewpoint, God has already revealed himself to Abraham in a vision. As the portion starts with, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent. And after this, after God already appeared, Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. So when Abraham saw travelers passing by, he asked God to wait and ran out to invite them in. From this understanding came the idea that greater is hospitality than receiving the divine presence. However, I think the story is different. Abraham is sitting at the entrance of his tent, and he sees God, or at least the angels of God. And I think Abraham does not recognize them as angels, but for him, they are just travelers. And yet, he runs out and insists that they stop for refreshments. I would like to stop here and reflect on the depth of the saying, greater is hospitality than receiving the divine presence. And I will ask again, if living and thinking like that does not sound heretical, to give priority to people, even in the time of need or trouble, to put human beings before God, the New Testament gives an additional insight into this discussion. In the first epistle of John, he asks, if we are not capable of liking and respecting people that are in front of us today, people next to us, whom we can see, whom we can communicate directly with, If we do not love and respect those we can see, how can we claim to love and respect God, whom we cannot see? How can we say we love God, but we do not love His creation? People who are made in the image of God. It is easy to live a life of faith, easy to welcome the divine presence when God reveals Himself to us. It is hard to see His presence hidden behind 3 anonymous travelers. The greatness of Abraham is that for him, serving God and showing hospitality to strangers is the same thing. It is the work of God in every way. Here we learn an important and fundamental principle of our lives as believers. We honor God through honoring the image of God, other people. I will make it even more difficult. Do we need to prefer the care of people over serving God? Is this not heresy? Yeshua is asking the same question in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Luke chapter 10. Yeshua is telling us a story of an anonymous traveler. On the way down from Jerusalem, he was attacked and wounded by robbers and left dying on the side of the road. Yeshua tells us of 2 people, a Cohen and a Levi, who saw him but did not stop to help. Why? Why didn't they help him? And why did Yeshua specifically choose a Cohen and a Levi as an example? Because the wounded man could die. Or maybe he is already dead. And if the priest or the Levite touch him, they will be defiled. They will become impure and will be unable to serve God in the temple. And this is our dilemma exactly. Which is more important, the work of God or crucial help to God's creation? I imagine them thinking, I want to help this poor man, but God is more important. I must remain pure for the work of God. I am a priest, and I have to lead people in the temple. It is all for God. Someone else who is not a priest will probably pass here soon. Someone who is not in a hurry to serve God. And hopefully he will help this poor man. In my opinion, the priest and the Levite were not bad or selfish people. I am sure they wanted to help, but they compared their commitment to the work of God with helping a stranger on the road, not knowing even if they are able to help, since they are not doctors, and the fellow is dying. They decided that the work of God was more important, and that on the road to Jerusalem will be others who could help. Yeshua goes on telling us of another simple man, a Samaritan, not of the children of Israel. But when he sees the wounded man, he stops to save him. He took care of him. By the way, the Samaritan wasn't a doctor either. He just took the wounded man to a place where he could be treated and cared for. Yeshua is asking, who in this case kept the commandment? Love your neighbor as yourself. Who showed kindness to the wounded man? And the answer, of course, the Samaritan. The same person who stopped everything, as I am sure the Samaritan was also busy and in a hurry. But nevertheless, he stopped his own personal race of life in order to help another man, flesh and blood, who was hurt. The moral of the parable is that we too have to act like the Samaritan. Yeshua teaches us that the poor and needy person standing before us is now a priority and comes before the work of God. The New Testament sees the commandment of hospitality is very important. The writer of Hebrews says, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitalities to angels without knowing it. What an exciting verse. In many Hasidic stories, hospitality is a fundamental mitzvah. There are many stories of rude or dirty guests who comes in and exploits the hospitality. In these stories, the rude or simple man is later revealed as a hidden righteous man or as an angel who tests the host. Hospitality can be difficult. A stranger enters our life. His presence can disturb our peace and comfort. He can violate our personal space and freedom that we have in our homes. Serving him food and refreshments can be also a challenge. And that's when we remember the example of Abraham and Lot and the words of the New Testament. For by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. This verse makes me excited and fills me with hope. It makes me wonder, could I have hosted an angel in my home or in the congregation? Let's go back to Abraham. He passes his test and invites those angels into the house. Abraham himself runs and hurries to take care of his guests and to serve them food and drinks. It is all done by the master himself, not by a worker, as Abraham has many workers. But the fact that he does it himself shows us that for Abraham it was not a hassle. On the contrary, he is happy to serve, and he does it quickly and with joy. Abraham teaches us that hospitality is the work of God. And when Abraham was sitting by Alonei Mamre, it is said, in the heat of the day. It was not clear when these passing travelers had a chance to eat, drink, or rest. So Abraham took care of them. He took care of those strangers in trouble, walking in the desert in the heat of the day. Abraham offers them food, drinks, and a place to rest. Yeshua deepens our understanding of this principle when he connects help to those in need with the work of God. Since man was created in the image and likeness of God, Yeshua teaches us that what we do for our brothers and neighbors is like we've done it unto Yeshua himself. This teaching appears many times in the New Testament, but the clearest one is found in Matthew 25. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And it goes on. The king, Yeshua, will reply, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of those brothers and sisters of mine, you've done it for me. From this teaching of Yeshua, we understand that everything we do to one another, visiting mourners, visiting the sick, charity, hospitality, it is all as if we are doing it to the King and to the Messiah, to Yeshua himself. This is what greater is hospitality than receiving the divine presence means. Because when we help each other, it is as if we have done it to the Creator of the world. the Spirit of the Lord will not dwell in us, not as a family and not in the community, unless we show hospitality, give charity, comfort mourners, and visit the sick. If we do not behave in a righteous and moral way, sitting and praying in the congregation, in the church, or in the synagogue will not help us. Without a righteous way of life, His Spirit will not dwell in us. We started with a well-known saying, greater is hospitality than receiving the divine presence. And we will end with another famous phrase, which in my opinion goes hand in hand with the first one. Derech Eretz, righteous way of life, precedes the Torah. The way we treat one another is important. Shabbat Shalom.